At least I can store this thing in your mane. I can't store things in Lion's mane now! That's like the easiest thing I do!
I guess, but why in the world isn't storing items inside of your own gemstone the easiest thing that you do?
Since you can't play nice, I'm gonna have to put this where you can't get it. In your mane.
Unless if it's literally impossible for our boy Steven to store items inside of his own gemstone for some reason, which would then raise a boatload of more questions about the situation.
What's he got now? That's the scabbard for Rose's sword!
But also very strangely answer a ton of questions about Rose Quartz's actions, like why the woman felt the need to store all of her most treasured and secret items inside of one of her deceased animal friends.
Oh, Lion. So you were...
Instead of, you know, inside of her own gemstone.
There's a pearl inside Pearl's pearl?
I'm not sure if you've ever noticed this massively overlooked detail, but while the very idea of all gems being made with a fairly basic ability to store items inside of their own gemstones have become popular within the community, from the moment that we learned that Pearl has been able to store ridiculous amounts of items inside of her gem.
This is why I get up in the morning.
We technically still don't know for sure if it's even possible for any other gem besides our girl Pearl to store and retrieve the same amount of items from their gemstones, which is beyond insane when you actually take a step back and think about it.
Pearl can't build a thing like this.
Why not?
Because pearls aren't for this. They're for standing around and looking nice and holding your stuff for you. Right?
It seems like storing items inside of a gem is to Pearl what shapeshifting is to Amethyst, which is to say that even though we've seen other gems use the ability on the show, they don't seem to have the same level of mastery over the skill.
She's a pearl. She's a made-to-order servant, just like the hundreds of other pearls being flaunted around back on Homeworld.
Wait. There's hundreds of pearls?
I mean, most of us have just been assuming that every single gem was made with the ability to store and retrieve the exact same amount of items inside of their own gemstones, despite the fact that, again, we've very clearly never seen any other gem besides Pearl have such a ridiculously high level of mastery over the skill.
Now, Greg, there's no need to be so pathetic. If anything happens to you, you can call us with this.
And we'd learned from our girl Peridot during the early season 2 episode titled Back to the Band that pearls were made to serve high-ranking gems on Homeworld.
Now listen here, you tiny twerp. In case you've forgotten, you're on our turf now. And I didn't fight a 1,000-year war for this planet's independence to take orders from the likes of you!
A detail about pearls which would perfectly explain why they were designed with the ability to store more items inside of their gemstones than a regular gem, which were made to achieve completely different goals for their society.
Where'd you get off acting like your own gem? You're just a pearl!
Yes!
But yeah, this possibility still doesn't really explain if our boy Steven was capable of storing items inside of his own gemstone on the show or not.
He can make Rose's bubble, and he's pulled out Rose's shield twice, but he's lost his healing powers.
The truth is that Steven Universe Art and Origins, which happens to be one of the show's official books, gave us undeniable proof that Steven was supposed to have been able to learn how to store and retrieve items from his gemstone at some point. Because we'd learned that one of the plans for his character was to have him slowly learn how to summon from a plethora of, and I quote, very feminine magical objects.
You what?
But this idea clearly never made its way onto the show, and we shouldn't treat every page from the art books as gospel when they've already changed other details in the past, like about Pink Pearl's fate.
Where am I? Welcome back.
Yeah, I mean, based on the timeline that was laid out for us neatly inside of the pages of the Steven Universe End of an Era art book, Pink Pearl, instead of gaining a permanent scar from her own diamond and then being mind controlled for thousands of years by White Diamond, was originally supposed to have been destroyed, as in killed off, by Yellow, Blue and White in retaliation for her choosing to stand up for Pink Diamond. But again, this is of course another one of the many details that was changed for the show.
This is all very nice, but it doesn't solve the mystery.
In short, because of the fact that we've never actually seen our boy Steven store or retrieve any items from inside of his own gemstone on the show, the movie, and not even the epilogue series, which was of course set years later, we should be able to safely come to the conclusion that the very concept of him eventually learning how to do so was completely removed from the show and its canon by the writers, which again just raises even more questions.
Unless some other me took it.
There's more of you in here?
Could our boy Steven's unique status as a gem and human hybrid somehow be keeping him from being able to store and retrieve items from his own gemstone or something? Well, while this idea might actually seem to make a ton of sense at first glance, especially when you consider the fact that rose quartz and pink diamond has been confirmed to have been mostly wiped from his gemstone. And I'm saying mostly here instead of completely, even though it'd be more accurate, because we've definitely seen Steven access Pink Diamond's old memories during moments like when he was stuck on the alien planet Astevoni during the season 5 episode titled Jungle Moon.
Steven, what was that? Diamonds. I'm having diamond dreams again.
But one thing that we know for sure is that Steven relies on Lion entirely for whenever it comes to storing and retrieving an item, which was also most likely true when it came to rose quartz. And this alone debunks the idea that his status as a gem hybrid was the reason behind why he wasn't able to access his inner gemstone beyond weapon summoning.
How did it get in there?
I don't know, but there's a ton of stuff in there. I keep stuff in him too.
I mean, rose quartz storing bismuth and the crystal gems war flag inside of Lion's mane makes sense to an extent, but why would she feel the need to store the sword that bismuth made for her inside of the pink dimension as well, when it was clearly supposed to have been viewed as being her signature offensive weapon?
Rose's sword. My finest piece of work.
Who made this?
Keep in mind that Pearl, who was Rose Quartz's closest companion and knew most of her biggest secrets, never learned about Lion's existence until thousands of years after the Gem War.
But how? Does Lion have something to do with Rose?
So it's not like Rose Quartz was riding Lion around on the battlefield and summoning her sword out of his forehead during combat whenever she needed it. The crystal gems were also presumably fighting and bubbling the corrupted gems to keep them safe for centuries after the Gem War, which would have required Rose Quartz to have had her sword to help her be a more effective leader and combatant during this process. I'm convinced that the diamonds physically and capable of storing items inside of the gemstones, and this is because of the fact that if Rose Quartz was able to summon items besides her shield from a gemstone, then her sword probably wouldn't have needed a scabbard to begin with. Yeah, Rose's sword having a special scabbard being crafted for it all of us years ago by bismuth kind of pushes us to the idea that her sword needed protecting in the first place, which implies that Rose Quartz wasn't capable of keeping her sword inside of her own gemstone. Maybe the reason for why Pearl decided to fight with small swords alongside Rose Quartz at the beginning of the Gem War until bismuth made her a weapon of her own was to hint at this possibility. The fact that Pink Diamond was made with the ability to store items inside of a giant space called the Pink Dimension also heavily implies that there is a yellow, blue, and white dimension out there, which is an idea that we've already briefly discussed here on the channel. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this discussion, and I'm really hoping that Last of the Stars will be able to find the time to reveal the truth behind the diamond's connection to the other hidden dimensions, because I'm sure that it's another worthy contender to get called out as being one of the darkest secrets of a fallen gem empire.